Welcome to the second FallUp Founder Stories.
Today, we interviewed Jarkko Antila and he shared his thoughts on becoming an entrepreneur and building a team.
Enjoy the episode.
Welcome, Jarkko. Thank you for finding time for this interview. To begin with, could you tell us about yourself in your own words? Who is Jarkko Antila and what is your background?
All right. Thanks very much. It's my pleasure to be here. And my name is Jarkko Antila, and currently I'm a self-learning consultant, I guess. But I have background in research and also, of course, in startups and deep tech. So shortly, I'm coming from a research background, then hopping onto a spin-off and doing an exit at the end for the spin-off company. And now I'm kind of on my way to my next step, so in my next company. And I guess as a person, I would call myself currently an entrepreneur, but I didn't think about that as such beforehand. So this kind of identity has revealed itself to me just lately.
That's really interesting to hear. So you did not consider yourself an entrepreneur when you were starting your first company, or?
Yeah, that's correct. I guess I had multiple roles in management and kind of team leadership and coordinating things both at VTT, where I was working in the research, and also in a private company where I was working as a normal person as a manager. And in all of those, I learned to kind of take initiative and be proactive and take things forward. So, but I never thought that they would be the qualities for an entrepreneur. So when I actually started the company, and we decided, or it was evident that we would need like real VC funding, that we needed investment. I also mentally maybe considered that as myself being in the role of managing, the company, but also the owners. So now when I'm actually have my like 100% my own business and company, now I feel much more like being a sort of real entrepreneur. So I'm not sure when this shift in my attitude happened, but yeah, that's true that I didn't really think about that when I started Spectral Engines.
That's really interesting to hear. So the change kind of happened when you got more equity in your own company, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess also the kind of the outside world has changed. It was 2013-14 when we spun out from Spectral Engines, and of course the startup cultures had started to kind of emerge, but it has changed a lot in the past 5-6 years, and I'm still coming from I guess a kind of an age where being an entrepreneur was not that popular. It got kind of connected to the some negative experiences from the 90s, and so in a way it was not very fashionable. So people were not considering that, hey, let's be an entrepreneur. Nowadays it's completely different, but also this kind of attitude environment was different then, and I guess I just never allowed myself to think that I would be such a person.
Okay. Were there like a one particular thing or some event that made you do the decision to start your own company and spin out of the academic world?
Yes and no. I can say that in if anything, then it was in November 2012. But it was not like a religious revelation or anything like that. It was more like a set of smaller things kind of coming together. And what happened then was actually I was at VTT, and a colleague of mine and myself, we were thinking about whether we should start using this new research financing tool from Tekes, and which is called Tutli, and nowadays Research to Business funding. And we had done all kinds of things earlier on that was giving sort of feed for this kind of idea. But that really made us think like, hey, we should probably actually start a company from this and not just generate another research topic or something like this. And on that day, in a very Finnish way, via SMS back then, he was like sending me, should we do it? And then I was like, yes, let's do it. So very, very kind of Finnish way of starting that. And then that kind of decided that we would apply for the funding. But also on that moment, that kind of changed our mindset, because we knew, both of us, me and my colleague, we knew that we would start pursuing towards company. So it would not be just like a test that would we get funding or not, but we really started doing that. And I kind of sort of resigned from my team leadership role in 2 months. So I started as a full-time project person then in 2 months after that.
Was it difficult to change the mindset in such a radical way? Like if before you were thinking about like the research, and like that was, I think, one of the key factors, and how to utilize it, and then the change suddenly is, and when you have to think about how to get funding, how to make this product profitable, and all those other new things. Like
It was not such a big step that people might think. The role of a team leader at VTT is actually selling projects and getting funding, although it is different than in a startup, but the mentality is a little bit the same. So you create new things, you need to package them, you need to find customers, funding from society, you need to kind of build the team within VTT and collaboration partners in order to make things work. And so it is a little bit what you do also in a startup. In a startup, you just kind of hopefully focus your activities, and the sources for funding are different. The daily work is a little bit different, but definitely this sort of team leadership role helps a lot in taking that step. So it was not as big, even as big as I kind of expected it to be.
Okay, so the kind of transition from academic life to becoming a entrepreneur and a founder was kind of natural, but were there like hard things that made you that got you out of your comfort zone, and how do you see the value of getting out of your comfort zone as a part of your personal development process?
That's actually a great question. I think it is a very essential part of that process, and I think that that has started for me much earlier on in my career, or maybe even before any career. That you take these kind of small steps when they are possible, when something feels that it doesn't really feel good, then you have to kind of investigate yourself, like where does this feeling come from? Is it something that is against your values, that you really don't want to do this because you're not such a person, or if it is just that you're a little bit scared because you haven't done that before. And if it's the answer is that you're just a little bit scared or for the unknown, then you should actively take those steps. And if you start taking them, then it becomes always easier to take those steps. And you know, before you know it, you are an entrepreneur at the end. So it doesn't need to be that you are living in a shielded environment for many years and then you make a huge change in your life. But it is kind of a continuous process, and that's probably one of the reasons why I did not think of me as an entrepreneur at some point, but I have kind of become such a thing during the career, and so there's lots of things where you are out of your comfort zone. Some things are rather big as well, so you need to take those bigger steps, but it is mostly those small decisive steps that you take along your life.
Yeah, and I think that is a pretty important part in being in the entrepreneurial attitude. Like it's not only about starting your own companies or getting funding, selling your product or anything like that. I think the core value is getting out of your comfort zone, trying bigger and bigger things, and ultimately failing at some, succeeding at some, and going forward. Did you feel like there was like some things that you had to relearn when you got into starting your own company?
Well, there were lots of things I needed to learn, and there were definitely something that I needed to relearn as well. The learning part were like sort of practical, operative things mostly. You know, financial management of a company, which I didn't have any deep experience on that before. But then like leadership and people management and kind of managing a teamwork and know-how is something that you need to continuously kind of relearn. And I had learned one way in at VTT and earlier for the for the researchers. So kind of running an expert organization. That's, you know, you have this coaching style of leadership because people know their topic, they know what they're doing. So what you know, you're left with managing their direction. To you create a strategy and a vision and try to guide people independently going to this direction. And it is not necessarily, and this should happen probably everywhere, but when you come out from research world to a company, you have people who don't have academic backgrounds. You know, they do assembly work and they go home, and so it doesn't apply automatically throughout the whole organization. So you need to relearn ways to work with people in a most efficient way, so that you give them the trust and the independence, but you still are clear what you expect and that there are goals to achieve, and that's a little bit different than for example in a research organization.
Building a team plays a essential role when you are finding co-founders, and after starting your business, finding the founding for your company. So what is your philosophy on team building?
Yeah, team definitely is of great importance, and I think when you start, especially, well, it's throughout the company, but especially when you start, when you have a few people, you need to have people who are in a way multi-talent, but that the roles are quite clear, that they're kind of the main thing that the person does is clear. It's not always that easy. I mean, if you have a company that is kind of designed to develop something technical for a couple of years, then the engineers might be easier to kind of divide. The work might be easier to divide, but when you have to think about who is doing business development, who is doing sales, who is doing marketing, who is doing the products, maybe research, fundraising, it's not always that straightforward. And I'm coming from a kind of a research background and those kinds of sort of deep tech companies, they usually lack this kind of business and sales and marketing part in their like starting teams. And also often there might be a CEO that is not that enthusiastic of being actually the CEO, but you know, the other guy wanted the technology part more. So this might happen as well. So of course it's not good. So like one strong part in my old company Spectral Engines with 4 founders was that we had a person that was responsible for that sales and marketing and business development from the start. One who was looking after the fundraising and kind of the overall development of the company, and then the technical person, and then engineers. So everybody knew what they were supposed to do. But then if one guy was missing, he was somewhere, then the other guys could come in and kind of patch that up. So if there was a customer meeting and the sales guy had double booked or whatever, then I could just go in. And so it's a kind of a dynamic team with clear basic roles, but the ability to be flexible. Then it changes a little bit over time, but when you build a team, I think those abilities are quite important.
It sounds like already in your first company you had a pretty well working and well-defined team. Is there anything that you are doing different this time around when you're building your second company?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, you never know what the right decisions really are when before you make them. My current company is more like a consulting company, so it is not looking at that kind of a growth yet as such. There might be some other companies coming later which might do that. But I guess one thing is that that founders might be really good in the beginning in their roles, but then you should be quite critical at some point whether you should need to kind of rearrange the whole. I mean, if you have like 20 people or more, are the founders in their roles the best ones? I think we were still pretty good, but I mean it's a long thing. If you are 6-7 years in a startup, kind of having the same role and pushing, it also might be good for the original founder to find a new role in the company, and it also helps in the scaling of the company, because otherwise, if you have say 4 people who have their own roles from the beginning, then it's quite difficult for others to kind of the new people to kind of jump into those roles when they are so well established. So it increases the scalability and the kind of transparency in the company if you shuffle a bit earlier than a few years after. So maybe that's something that I would in my next company would consider, to think about those roles of the founders also earlier than after the exit.
How about, are you an idea person or a team person? So do you believe in the execution part, or is the idea first?
That's a great question. We had a kind of a management team project for our management group and at Spectral Engines. Part of that was an evaluation of people, and one little part of that was to evaluate whether people are on the innovation side or on the execution side or on the analysis side, or kind of being critical towards like other people's ideas. And this kind of relates to the team building, by the way. It turned out, I mean, we knew it, but it turned out that as management group, we were quite innovative. We were pretty capable of analyzing each other's ideas, but the execution was a little bit like on the dip side on that whole. I mean, it was not bad, but compared to the other two others, which were really good, it was not well balanced in a way. That's something that is good to understand when you are building a team and like a management team. Myself, in that evaluation, it turns out actually that I'm quite even in all of those three aspects. That I do innovations, but then I care also like how they are in practice, like implemented, and then I can evaluate my own or other people's ideas, whether they are good or not. But maybe I still consider myself more on the innovation end than the other end.
That's really interesting to hear, like this three-way split of innovation and execution. And how would you see, are like corporate creating these startup habits, like taking your shoes off when you come to office or something like that? Like, are you trying to create something like that in your own startups or?
Yeah, yes, definitely. That's actually a very tricky thing. The corporate culture, it really exists and it really happens so that people start doing things, and if that's kind of the accepted way of doing things, then that becomes the culture. I think that I mean, yeah, we took off our shoes, for example, but it was partly due to also that we were handling like delicate measurement instruments. So you know, there were practical reasons to it, but anyways, I think it is good to go through this basic sort of company rules with people, kind of generate them if you don't have them. Just, you know, that should be on time in meetings, and you should respect each other, and you should say hi, and basic stuff. But then it becomes more concrete for everybody what is expected. But the most important thing is that if people start turning up late, that's like one example of culture. You should stop that. You should say immediately, not like after 3 times or after 5 times, but right away. Because culture is very important. If it gets to grow to some unwanted direction, it's very difficult to kind of take that back. And when you listen to the you know, these gaming companies, and they talk a lot about culture, I think they are pretty advanced in that thinking. It's not necessarily that common, but I think that it has a big value in all companies.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the most common mistake that young entrepreneurs make in general?
Well, I guess it is to overestimate the capability of the customers to start buying your products quickly. Let's put it that way. Even though you would make a nice market survey, and you would you know, have good connections with customers, like in B2B, if you have potential customer companies, and they would indicate that, hey, this looks good. It's still not a business decision yet from them, and it can be very much slower than you think. But of course, you don't know that, and if you gather funding and you make the most pessimistic scenario in the world to this, it doesn't work either, because then nobody will fund this case. But I think that the slowness of the market is the most common mistake.
That's really an interesting point. So, like the threats are in a way outside. You have to be ready to withstand some time and wait for the market to adapt to your product. You cannot just come in and tell the customers, here it is, buy this now, and it takes some time to adapt.
That's true. Of course, depends again what you're selling. If you have a very scalable consumer like like a game, it can hyperscale really quickly. If you are in B2B hardware business or like in space technology, then the timelines are really long, and you have to take care like how you use that time, because if you develop something for 3 years and you miss you make some mistakes that you miss 6 months, it doesn't feel that it's like that much in that 3 years, but your revenue is which is always exponential, how you draw it, that also goes away. So it's actually a big amount of money that is lost due to all kinds of difficulties. But naturally, I mean, there's people don't necessarily, if they don't have production, if you need to produce something like hardware, for example, if they don't necessarily have the know-how of how production works for that product, or what kind of difficulties, if you are bringing out a completely new technology from a research organization, there might be some unknown difficulties in scaling up the production. That's another typical thing that people don't necessarily know how to foresee. But yeah, again, depends a lot on the product. But yeah, if the markets start pulling, then I think that's still a secondary problem. It's a serious problem if you can't produce, but it's better to have it that way.
Yeah, of course. Like, you are already on your path to your second company, and you have been in very high stress situations during these years. And do you have any ways or habits that you use for managing your stress?
Well, of course, it's I have a small kid, so that balances up life a little bit, and a dog also. So what I was my common way of having my last meeting of the day was to have it when I was walking the dog. It works pretty well actually, especially with Finnish people. If you go to other cultures, you actually might have some problems. They are not that fond of that habit, so you need to take care. But yeah, I've been just this sports and family life, and please dedicate some time to that, and just indicate to other people that unless it's like a big emergency, you're not working around the clock. That it's also this cultural thing that you can teach to other people, that there are working times, and even though people would be very enthusiastic and all that, it's still, you still need to take a break, and that's what I at least try to do. It's a learning process, I guess, a little bit difficult, but it's good if you find a hobby or something that you do where you can really stop thinking about work, whether you are in the middle of negative or positive thoughts, but just do something else. For me, climbing is a way to do that, because if you think of something else, you fall off the wall. So that's a good instant feedback.
Good routines, or yeah. How about is there something? What would you like to say to the younger self of yourself, and 18 years old or so?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing is that what kind of advice would I give, and the other one, what kind of advice would an 18-year-old Jarkko listen? From a middle-aged Jarkko, I'm not sure how that would work, but I guess I would come back a little bit to where we started. That I would encourage him to take those steps that you see in front of you. Even though they would feel scary, but just start going to that direction, because that is actually the right direction. It's people often think like, what should they do, and what will I become when I'm big? But if you follow those kind of gut feelings about what is right for you, it doesn't matter really about the subject. Then you are always making a right step in your life and as a human being. And I believe that then also this kind of working career and everything else folds around that eventually.
Yeah, there's this saying that I really like, that if you made a choice that felt right, it was the right choice, even though it might have gone wrong after that. But you make choices on the basis of how you see the world now. So
That is exactly right.
I think we grazed a bit already on that one, but would you have any last words for upcoming entrepreneurs?
Well, be brave to take those steps. I guess that's repeating myself a little bit, and don't be afraid to network and be visible. It helps in creating contacts, creating contacts to like people who can fund you or be your partner in your startup life. And yeah, I guess don't overthink it. Then just start doing it.
That's an amazing piece of advice. Thank you a lot for coming here with us today.
All right, thanks very much, and good luck, everybody.